Okay, a beautiful, she told us recordings in progress. A beautiful good morning, good afternoon, good evening, something good. Um, for all my colleagues in HQ in Israel, they're starting the weekend because it's Thursday, it's after 5. For the rest of us, it's almost the weekend. In Poland, we call it the mini weekend. That on Thursdays, it's the mini weekend because on Friday, the normal weekend starts. And what better way to start our mini weekend than with some facilitation talks? And I'm really excited today to be hosting this meeting for 1 hour with Gail. And I really want to say for me, Gail is Wonder Woman, and she has like 50 Shades of Gail. That will be the next book we'll write. Whatever you need, expertise, Gail can be your woman from, I hope I'm not selling too much, but from wine to coffee to, of course, facilitation. And not only Gail will facilitate the experience of your life, and then she'll teach you all the newest technical things in the minute. And she also miniaturizes. And I'm always impressed that Gail travels light. I just finished traveling. And in today's world where your suitcases are being lost and things are happening, to travel light is another skill. Maybe we will have time to talk about later. And I think before we start, Gail prepared a short post for us, 2 minutes, just again for us to connect, to post, to see where we are. And then as always, of course, we'll be waiting for all your questions, for anything that you may want to ask Gail, especially following her 2 weeks ago, we had her imposter syndrome workshop, which at least for me was very powerful. We are here. So let's start with this beautiful Gail and just connect where you are. And I'll see you in 2 minutes, 22 seconds, something like that. Enjoy the pose.
Stars shining bright above you. Night breezes seem to whisper, I love you. Birds singing in the sycamore tree. Dream a little dream of me. Say nighty night and kiss me. Just hold me tight and tell me you'll miss me. While I'm alone and blue as can be. Dream a little dream of me. Stars fading, but I linger on, dear. Still craving your kiss. I'm longing to linger till dawn, dear. Just saying this. Sweet dreams till sunbeams find you. Sweet dreams that leave all worries behind you. But in your dreams, wherever they be, dream a little dream of me. Stars fading, but I linger on, dear. Still craving your kiss. I'm longing to linger till dawn, dear. Just saying this. Sweet dreams till sunbeams find you. Sweet dreams that leave all worries behind you. But in your dreams, wherever they be, dream a little dream of me.
Welcome back, everyone. I hope you all enjoy that short pause, and thank you, Marek, for that grand introduction. I hope you don't oversold me, but I'm here to start this conversation. This is more than a workshop, it's just a free conversation between all of us. So be the facilitator of this space, and I'm going to try to answer as to the best of my abilities.
And thank you, Gail, so much. And maybe just for everyone to have this opportunity to get to know you a bit better, how would you call or how would you define your facilitation style?
My facilitation style, that's a big question. I try to be very expressive and always creating a lot of experiences, whether I'm doing a point of view workshop or other workshop in different spaces. I always try to play a little with the people, to try to invite them to experience. I learned long ago in coaching school, if the knowledge doesn't go through your body, like if you don't live the experience, you don't really learn it. It's just data, a lot of data in your head.
So maybe to continue, for me, you make really memorable workshops, and I still remember Wings of Conference. I don't know who was in the Wings of Conference workshop. We had this workshop of meeting ourselves, and also here with the imposter syndrome. And when I just saw Gail writing imposter syndrome, my heart like beated faster, because I felt it's really something I'm facing. So I'm curious, where do you get the inspiration for the amazing content that you bring?
Well, first of all, from myself. I always take a topic that it's close to me, because otherwise I don't feel like I'm doing justice to a theme that I don't actually think I have it. The imposter syndrome, I've lived with it. And also because I'm always very afraid of being found a fraud, I will never take a topic that I don't feel I have something to add, either from experience or because I really studied deeply. Because otherwise, if someone tells me to talk about, I don't know, venture capital, I really will feel like, even though I know a little bit, I could never master a workshop about it, because I will really feel like a fraud. So then my worst fears comes to life. The same thing on the Dare to Show Up in the Winds of Change conference. It was all about trying to pitch myself in different circumstances. How do I show up when, especially during COVID, when everything was shut down? So it was my own challenge and how I overcome it. And then I transform it into a workshop. So I just take it from practical personal experience. I think that's the best way to facilitate things.
It does, but you make it sound so easy. Any, I don't know, tips from us, how to look for the content inside of us, how to make it so engaging?
Usually when I'm creating, I've created more than 50 different workshops. I'm always creating different topics, things that either I know a lot about or they're personal elements for me. But first I try to see what could help me. I always play with myself. So when I'm creating, I'm taking a topic and I'm asking myself and playing. So that's the best way to see if this works or not. When I'm researching a topic, I would try and find what are the relevant questions that a topic has. Like when I did the psychological blind spots, what are the 3 most important questions that doing research people tend to not ask themselves to bring to light their psychological blind spots. So I usually go either Googling or talking to people and says, what would be the most relevant question for you? And then I pick 3 or 4 questions that make sense. And then I play with myself. And then I usually grab 1 or 2 guinea pigs that they're always available around me. And I say, let's give it a try. And I always try to make it, if the topic is fun, I try to make it a little bit more unexpected, precise. On the Dare to Show Up, I wanted to do different things, put everyone in black and white, or teach them something different that they could do with the tools that are available to us. So that way it's fun for me. And if it's fun for me, I'm guessing that it could be fun and engaging for others. not on every workshop you can make it too fun, because some workshops tend to pick deep topics on your life. So sometimes the energy goes like really deep. And then you just need to contain it and embrace it and give like a safe space for people to either kind of, in Spanish, in coaching, there's a space called habitar, which is like to have, I don't know if this is the proper word, but to habitate or to just be there in the moment, feeling what you're feeling, because probably you haven't realized something about yourself for a long time. So you need to be very careful with your design. Like if you're going to go into a very deep topic, you need to allow time for that bubble to settle in and not go too fast to the next step or to start taking the energy up again. It's always kind of a wave. I also like the 5 rhythms. So when I do bigger workshops, I use the 5 rhythms on the background so I could design it accordingly, like something flowy, and then let's go to action, and then it's the chaos, the chaotic time, and then it just goes to the lyrical part, and then just to the quietness in the end. So which is similar to our point of view method, from like pause, expand, focus, and then action. But after the action, you always want to just kind of grab and grasp what is it that you learn or what you decided to do, etc.
And if you could maybe just put in the chat the name of the 5 ways. I don't know, probably it's a method, just in case someone wants to research. And I really like how you added it with points of view. And if we're talking with points of view, because I kicked into the facilitation side, it would be amazing to hear how your journey with points of view started. Like, because you're taking everything from inspiration from yourself. So how did this meet with points of view?
With points of view, well, I was, it's very funny because I was finishing, I had finished studying ontological coaching, and then I went and specialized in body language and movement coaching. And that was kind of a very intense kind of workshop. It was 5 days in the mountains, like really stressing your body to the max and just kind of exercising everything inside of you. So I was kind of moved, and then I had to go back to work, and I was very miserable at that time doing what I was doing. I says, my body really doesn't want to be here. And all of a sudden I see points of view on a screen, and it was just kind of a kick in my gut saying, I really need to do this. And I write down, and someone write back from Israel right away. So the next day we scheduled like a Skype. Skype was very popular back then. This was in 2015, I guess. And someone wrote me, says, let's have a Skype meeting. And then we had like a short experience. And I got a card, and the card was death. And it really hit me very hard. Like I felt like I was dying in that place. And there was going to be a 5-day workshop. It was called the TPF or something like that, trainer certification program, or TCP. I don't know, TCP, something like that. And then it was in New York, and I went the same day to ask for my boss for holidays to go and do this workshop. I says, I really have to do it. And he said no. And then I was so damn frustrated. Then I went back again upstairs to his office and says, wait a minute, it's summer, there's nothing to do, and you don't want to give me like 2 weeks holidays? There's really nothing for me to do here. But if you're not going to give me holidays, are you going to give me a raise? Because we've been talking about a year for this. He also says no. And I said, okay. I went back downstairs and I resigned that same day. So it was all in 24 hours that it was kind of a gut feeling that I said, I cannot really be here. I'm done. I just got the energy to ask for the 2 things that I really wanted, holidays and a raise, and I got 2 no's. So then I said, well, bye-bye. And then I said, what the hell I've done? I resigned. I have no savings. What am I going to do? And I want to go to New York. And I start getting creative. And I found that I had some miles. My mother said, don't worry, if you need money, we will lend it to you. So that's it. I went to New York, and it really started a journey that I didn't even ask what it was all about. I hadn't even seen a game, a card. I got everything there. And at the beginning, it was my first impression says, where the hell did I got myself into? This is very weird. And that was my first impression. I says, but I like it. It's kind of good weird. And I met many amazing people back then. It was Efrat and Shelley facilitating. And from there, everything that it says point of view, and I start saying yes to everything. It says, I want to be here. I want to do this workshop. And then on the second wave of the master, when it wasn't called L4, but when the first one started, I start kind of really stalking Efrat and everyone in HQ. Says, how can I did not know that you were going to be doing this kind of training to facilitate L3? I want in. And I start writing like every 2 weeks, and then just once a month until the second batch of facilitators was open, and they offered it to me, and I says yes, before I even knew the price or whatever. And again, I says, oh my God, I need to figure out where to get the money. But from then on, I was kind of always open to this amazing experience. And I think that one of the things that I'm most grateful about, it was the opportunities to facilitate in different places of the world. I went to Costa Rica to help on an L3. I went to Arizona. I went to Vietnam, where I was helping you. I went there for 4 weeks. Again, I'm a carry-on only traveler, and it was amazing. And in China, where I was the lead facilitator in China, and then Mexico. And I would say that for me, what I've learned hosting in different cultures, different countries, especially in Vietnam, we had like 22 people from 16 different places, from countries in Asia, so many different cultures, 5 religions were like combined there. So it was kind of unique, and I've learned more than what I would have learned reading from a book or studying how to facilitate in multicultural, multi-religion spaces, the type of problems that certain cultures tend to have, because it was always a theme. In China, there was a theme. In Vietnam, people tend to have similar, I wouldn't say exactly the same, but very different from what I experienced facilitating in Costa Rica. So learning a little bit about our pains, our challenges, our struggles, and also our ability to transform. That was amazing. I've learned more than I could have ever learned in this journey. So I became really passionate about points of view, and I try to include it in everything that I do. So that's how I became a lead master, and it was a very intense journey. Even when I was facilitated in China, I had a tooth problem, and I thought I was going to be disfigured, had to go to a hospital. I realized that it was all about stress. I always tried to be imposter syndrome, trying to be perfect and overdoing it and over preparing. But in the end, it was quite worth it.
Super. And also Gail is a country leader. So I think Gail knows points of view from so many different aspects. So I think it's the best occasion to open up to any questions maybe someone has about her workshop, facilitation tips.
Yes, hi Gail. Elsa.
Hi, Elsa.
Nice meeting you. So I belong to the tribe as well, and because of the theme in terms of imposter syndrome, do you coach with the game of point of view in this aspect, in this theme, and more or both ways, in individually and in groups? Or how do you feel more comfortable in particular with this theme? Because in a way, it's more individual than groups, but I can imagine that could work in groups as well. So how do you feel about it?
I coach a lot in groups. I love the power of a group because it's also, especially in the imposter syndrome, one of the biggest elements to actually overcome it is to have a support system, like to feel like you're not alone, like you're not the only one with this. And having a support system or someone to talk to helps a lot to actually overcome it. That doesn't mean that I do a lot of one-on-one. I work as a life coach and as a business coach. So I have clients from the corporate and CEOs that has the syndrome. So I help them a lot to kind of overcome it and to actually, I always push them a little bit to open up to their company and say that they do have the syndrome, because it helps a lot to not feel too alone. And a lot of people kind of embrace vulnerability in a huge way. So whether I'm coaching one-on-one or in groups, I use point of view, but I use other techniques as well. As I'm specialized in body language and movement, I try to work a lot with your body, with your emotional state of mind. Whenever I can, I'm also a horse coach, so I use horses, I use wine, and I use a lot of other techniques that may help, because I would say that it's not only one recipe to overcome it. Every person is different. Every person is unique. Sometimes something works with someone, and with the next person, it doesn't really work, or they don't want to go into that path. So it's always kind of, I have a general idea, but it's always kind of tailor-made when you work one-on-one. But when you work with a group, usually people find peers, they find connections. And sometimes what works for one member of the group, by sharing their experience, it helps the other. So it's also lighter in you, not to have to come up with a specific technique for someone to connect with that. So that's usually what I do in the topic. But there's a few elements that correlate to everyone. The try to open up and speak about it always helps. To have a support system always helps. To try to kind of see all of your accolades and try to tell your own brain, you have what it takes. You do look at your successes, look at your achievements, look at everything that you have studied. So sometimes, I don't know if any of you have ever done the exercise of actually grabbing every single diploma that you have, every single award or recognition that you have, and spread it like on the floor, because it's something that impacts you visually, and it tells your brain to, hey, why do you ever feel like you're a fraud? Look at everything that you have accomplished or everything that you have. It's a really good exercise. Nowadays with the digital diplomas, I don't know, you'll have to put them on the screen or try to print them, because when I did the exercise, I said, when on earth did I find so much time to take all of these courses? Because at some point I collected a lot of courses, a lot of things, because I always felt like I needed to learn more. I need to be more of an expert. I'm not good enough. So I started studying a lot until I said, I think I have enough. I feel my quota for the time being. Maybe next year I'll feel differently.
Thank you for that question. And we saw your magic in working the group, and maybe you have like any tip how to work on one-on-one with a client with the tools and imposter syndrome, maybe how to open them up, even, to the possibility that they have it?
When I work one-on-one, usually I either, whether it's virtual or face-to-face, I try to ask questions using different cards, but with faces usually helps to identify how they feel. So it's kind of working on their shadows. So sometimes I mix a little bit to find their own blind spots, and then to move towards identifying the things that they do have at hand. So, but what works for me the most is trying to do some body work, because usually your brain at some point can't say, okay, I believe, but somehow my body, it's not aligned with what my head is thinking. It's like, okay, I know I have all of these achievements and accolades, but every time I need to face a crowd, my body gets like, I get nervous. I get kind of, my heart start racing, and I get all of this anxiety and insecurities. So usually I try to work with the body, doing breathing works, doing a little bit of movement, trying to change the feeling in the body, and the emotional response that they have when someone has the syndrome. Because at some point you can convince the mind, but your automatic mode goes into stress mode. So I kind of blend both things.
Super. Thanks for that. And I just saw Elsa wrote in the chat, it reminds me that people tend to forget about the resources and either spreading certificates on the floor or naming them, and asking a colleague to take notes and read it aloud makes an impact as well. Interesting to see how many of us went through this syndrome.
No. Well, at some point during the workshop, I did a lot of research about it. It says that at some point 70% of people in the world will either go through the syndrome or will experience the syndrome at some point in their life. And so it's very general to have this feeling. And it could be for a moment in life, or just the person that live with the syndrome. I would say that you don't overcome it 100%, but you make it an ally out of it, because it's the background noise. I still hear myself with the doubts every time I do something, but less and less, which is amazing.
And I think it was really interesting. I don't remember, did you share it in the session or in one of our rehearsals? It was like, for example, like the number of CEOs who have it, and people in high positions that, that the people we look up to, in fact, are also struggling with it.
Well, the majority of the people with the syndrome are high achieving people. Like there's many CEOs, owners of companies, presidents of big corporations, because at some point the syndrome kicks in when you cannot really understand that you are successful. You don't believe in your success. You think that your success is out of luck, like you get there by mistake, that you don't deserve it. And usually when people pays you compliments, you tend to downplay it. Like you say, no, it's not that big. No, this was a teamwork. No, it's not really me. Don't worry. So people that tend to really downplay compliments when someone says, oh, this was amazing, you did it super good. It could be that someone is experiencing the syndrome because you tend to diminish all of your accomplishments. But it's very present in a lot of extremely successful people. Like when I study a little bit about famous people like Tom Hanks, what was this? Albert Einstein, Serena Williams, which is kind of she has won the tennis games and I don't know how many Grand Slams, and she feels like she's always afraid of being found a fraud. I'm trying to remember this actress that has won so many Grammy Awards. I don't
Meryl
remember.
Streep?
Meryl Streep. Meryl Streep also has it. So can you imagine someone as successful, as intelligent, and as accomplished like her having imposter syndrome? And I say, well, I feel less alone, and I feel like, okay, if she has it, why not me? It's all good.
Great. Thank you, Azif, for the question. Who wants to add anything?
May I ask a question?
Of course. Hi,
Yeah.
Anna.
Hello to everyone once again. Just a brief question about, you mentioned that the imposter syndrome you've been working with. Are there other topics that you feel your heart is beating for in terms of working with the cards, or with other tools you're working with, the topics that are your topics that you find important, somehow valuable, somehow worth working with and giving attention to them?
Well, that's a good question. Before the pandemic, I was working in very different topics than during the pandemic. I would say that nowadays I use a lot the cards in actually connecting people, because I do a lot of team coaching and work with organizations. And after COVID, these are highly digitalized teams, but very disconnected from one another. So there's when a team has actually just meet for meetings, what they lose is the ability to connect humanly. And when there's no connections, there's no trust, there's no collaboration. The communication is actually a little broken. So I use a lot of points of view for workshops that the only purpose of the workshop is for them to get to know one another, to connect. Because in face-to-face companies, when you're working with like face-to-face, you had these, like, I don't know, when you go for a coffee, you go for lunch, you meet on the halls and you start talking about things that are not really related to work. When you take everything out, how do you really connect with other people? There's no time for chit chat to ask for your children or how's life. And I don't really see the whole of you in a lot of teams. Like, for example, here, I appreciate that the majority of you have the camera on, but I've seen with other teams and all the meetings have happened with the camera off. So not only you have no idea if they're really paying attention, the feeling that I'm alone in a company, kind of just killing my own meat and doing my own work. And I do not know the people. I do not know how to ask for help. The coordination, the cycle of communication and coordination inside is broken. And there's no trust, because trust is built with connections. So what I've been doing in the past 2 years is just create connections, create spaces for people to meet and connect. Because once they connect, they start trusting. And when they start trusting, collaboration actually is raised around between 30 to 40%, just by taking time to get to know one another. And when you don't feel so alone, you can actually say, hey, would you help me with this or don't? Because a lot of people start getting into companies during pandemic and they have never met face-to-face with the rest of the team. And I work a lot in different countries. So it's not something that only is happening in my own country, it's happening worldwide. So to become more, to improve collaboration, connectivity, I use a lot of points of view. It's fantastic to, even virtually, to create spaces for real connections, it kind of humanize conversations. We stop talking about technical things and start talking about ourselves. So I use it a lot there. And on personal levels, I use it a lot to discover blind spots. We're so full of blind spots, and it's kind of not so in your face when you're just talking and playing with cards instead of with another person that it's in front of you. Like sometimes it's easier to unveil your own psychological blind spots through the cards, instead of just me saying what I see on the other person. So I would say that nowadays, those are the main topics that I'm working about. Before that, I used to work a lot with female empowerment, with teenagers trying to find their purpose um, for the future, especially the ones that are finishing in school and they have no idea what they want to study for the rest of their life. And they have what society is telling them to study, and they're so lost. So I used to work a lot with teenagers, and a lot with females. But overall, I always work a lot with executives and companies. So usually our leadership skills also are something that on one-on-one conversations, and I blend that with body language, because the body of a leader, it's not the same if you are going to be a leader and you're going to be, yes, we are going to talk about the forecast, and all my body, what it's projecting, it's insecurity, it's that I feel that I need to protect myself, that I feel small. So I usually tend to teach people how to use the body language to express, and even if it's on screen, to use your hands, to move, to like sit straight, to put your back backwards, because it's not the same if you're going to be in front of the camera trying to tell someone what to do, or you're going to be in a listening mode, kind of all back down. And also when you see, you can do this with cards as well. Their faces has cards with different body language positions. So to work with the body language of a leader and to allow your body to back up your words, I think it's very important.
And we got, I think, a super question. I'm really curious also to know. Sometimes I find it difficult to engage CEOs and points of view, as they tend to think of it that they're playing cards. It's for kids, not for their level. How do you go about it?
It's because I tell them that these are, first, before I take the cards out, I always invite them to see if they would like to explore it through neuroscience. And I say, look, this is a projective tool. It's not tarot cards or anything. And because you're a super busy person, instead of going around with just conversation, why don't we go to the point and just explore what is it that can emerge? And if they want a little bit more technical data, I kind of create a context that it's more technical. So they tend to become very curious. And I always say, the picture is just an excuse to talk and unveil what is it like holding you back. Would you just explore with this? It's going to save us, both of us, a lot of time. And if it doesn't work, we have other techniques, but this will be more straightforward. And once they kind of lower the barriers and they start seeing the powerful tools that they kind of just jump into it. So much that at some point says, are you going to take the cards out? Like, are we going to start playing? And they start asking for them. Or sometimes after the session, if it was virtual, says, can you send me the cards that I pick? I would like to keep on exploring. So they become kind of desirable.
Nice. So it's in the end the language, the PR. I think we talk a lot in facilitation about PR. So if you hear correctly, then it's through a good PR. Mm-hmm. Build up tools. And I wrote the words, I think, for all of us to remember, projectile tool, that it's exactly to confront, to save time, not to beat around the bush. 20 your words, I'm making it, but I think they're super useful. And I hope like the PR on using the tools.
A good something that helped me a lot. I used to talk a lot with Judy Weiser, who wrote the book How to Work with Phototherapy and Family Albums. It's a book that she wrote in 1993, and actually is what its point of view based on. And she kind of talks a lot about the power of working with phototherapy, So they're extremely projectile tools. It's like seeing on the mirror. Interpretation changes from person to person and according to the mood. What I see on the card, it's if in terms of ontological, I'll put it to you. It's Judy Weiser. Her book is amazing. What you unveil through photography, it's actually the observer. Who are you being? Because what I see on a picture says everything about me. And usually when I'm working with people, I always try to create experiences where they can compare, like what I see on a picture is not what someone else see on the picture. And usually there is another distinction that arises, which is called phenomenology, because why is my explanation? My explanation, remember that what I observe, it's what I see or hear, plus my own interpretation, which is 50% of what I hear or what I see on a picture. And my interpretation has to do with my culture, my experiences, my story, my lineage, the beliefs that I have. And that is how I create the interpretations. So I've seen it so many times when someone pick a card and says, oh, this is so pleasant. And someone else says, no, they're fighting. This is not so good. It's all going to, and then it says, it's just a picture, but people give you the whole story. But what they are not realizing is that they're telling me about their own problems, the way that they view the world, that their beliefs, everything that it's kind of behind. So as a coach, just with one card, if I just ask, what do you see? It gives me a lot of insights in order what's going on with that person. So I see who is she being at that moment in time? How is she feeling? What is the view that she has from the world? Because what you need to be very kind of open, it's about the explanation. It doesn't really matter if you see green, blue, white. It's why do you see that? And the explanations that comes after, especially if you pay attention to the wording, it's just unveiling you. So it's very easy to understand the human behind that person, and that's super powerful. And it's so interpretative that it could work for working with people all over the world. When I was in China, language was a barrier, but phototherapy helped me to connect, and the rest was a little bit mixed with body language and just to try to understand what was happening there. Yeah, it was very interesting to see how just talking about one picture could really change the course of a coaching therapy, for at least for me. Sometimes I have people that goes around. Have you ever had these people that keeps on going an explanation and goes around, and they over explain, and they want to tell you about every single detail about that same problem, and they are just on the loop, and they do not want to see a different side of the story. So usually with points of view, you cut the loop and you go to a different place to see the story from a different angle, and there a lot of insights arise.
Yeah, super. And thanks for mentioning Judy Weiser. I also posted the link to her book. That's the book Gail mentioned. It's a good one, not an easy one, at least for me. I think it's a hard one, but definitely good. Any questions? Please go ahead.
Ro, I thought you were going to ask something before.
Yes, thank you, Gail. I'm Rosalba from Mexico. Nice meeting you.
Nice
If I understood correctly, when you do your design, when you do the design of your workshop, you usually think about these 5 states and try to be, try to select a theme that you really have lived, or how do you design them?
Well, sometimes it all depends if I'm designing something that I want to facilitate, or if it's a request from a specific topic. So if someone asked me to do a workshop with a specific objective, in point of view, remember that you really need to understand first the objectives, and then you kind of design the workshop. Sometimes I just want to talk about a theme, so the design flow, it's different there. I have a theme, then having this theme, I just say, what are the 2 or 3 things that I would like people to get from these 2-hour workshops? But it all depends if it's a 2-hour workshop or a whole day or a 5 days retreat workshop, because the flow will vary among it. But a 2-hour workshop, it's kind of a mini journey. And after that, I just focus on designing the expansion part. If we talk about the points of view style, it will be method, sorry, it will be the expansion part. And usually I try to pick either 3 top 4 questions that will help me expand the topic that I'm designing, but also questions that will connect with the objectives. Because if, for example, one of my objectives is for people to understand a little bit more the chosen topic, to understand it more, I cannot ask questions that will not help me understand it better, that will take me in a different direction. So they need to be aligned. My questions need to serve my purpose. If my purpose is for them to connect, my questions need to be focused on connecting the people. And always having this either topic, but specifically your audience also. I would say audience or topic first. If in my case, for example, imposter syndrome, my objective, my target audience was people from all around the world, various ages, and it was very broad topic. So my questions needed to serve everyone. It's not the same if I'm going to do imposter syndrome with a group of CEOs. Probably I can change a couple of things because I have a more specific audience. But if it's very broad, you need to serve your audience. And the objectives, for examples, when I pick my objective, I say, okay, to understand it and to be able to embrace it. Because at some point I cannot say to get rid of it, or because it's not something that you can do in a 2-hour workshop. So your objectives needs to be realistic. You can embrace something, but you're not going to be able to just take it out of your system in a 2-hour workshop. That's a longer process. And then just the questions, and the questions, when you work with point of view, the questions always need to be very simple, very straightforward, and always open. Otherwise, I cannot expand my point of view with a picture if the question is a yes or no answer. And there is one tip that I can give you when you are designing something with 3 questions. There is something that I always have in mind. I always like the appreciative look. I always start with a more of an appreciative question. Whatever is your second question, you need to ask for the exact opposite, like the other side of the coin. If you are going to ask for something, whatever, the ideal, then you ask for the reality. If you are going to, like in zooming in, if you're going to ask for what works, what doesn't work, the past, the present, the gains, the loss, the challenge, the gains and the challenges. So whatever the first 2 questions, you always need to try to broaden the spectrum. So don't ask 2 questions that go in the same direction or ask the same side. Just ask 2 very different things. And then usually your third question targets the gap, the bridge. How do you bridge one to the other one? Or how do you create the next step? usually the focus tends to come from the third question or fourth, if you would like a fourth question. But then you create an invitation, or you connect the ideal with the reality, or analyzing the gain and losses. Then what can you take out of it, or what can you incorporate, or things like that. But always small and open questions that will allow you to expand with points of view. Otherwise, if it's a yes or no question, you don't really have much to do with a photograph. And from there, I use the point of view method. If it's a point of view workshop, I use the method, so that way you always do the focus on the action. And as a coach, I've learned that whenever you don't finish with an action, it doesn't need to be specifically an action plan, but a single action, there's no transformation. It's just a moment where, I saw so many good things about myself, but I didn't put it into practice. So 6 months later, I'm still in the same place, maybe more aware, but nothing has changed because I haven't changed my routine. I haven't implemented something new. I haven't done one single thing towards being closer to my goals. So always finish with something tangible that people will face. One thing that I incorporate in the imposter syndrome workshop, that I'm trying to incorporate in all my other workshops, is that sometimes action plans, they look very good in paper, but you don't actually follow through, because we, especially in Spanish, you know that the word accountability doesn't exist in my language. So that tells me that culturally our brains are not designed to actually be accountable. I said I was going to do something, I just don't see it through, especially when you promise something to yourself. So adding something about like a last stage, like how are you going to make sure that you do what you said you're going to do? Otherwise, it's very easy to trick yourself, to boycott, to procrastinate, and to not really transform anything. Oh, I had a 2-hour workshop, I did a plan. A year later, the plan is still exactly where you put it, in that little piece of paper. That's it.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Gail. Nice meeting you.
Welcome.
It was, thank you, Gail. Like, it was full course on designing a workshop for everyone. But I also want to add that, especially in Gail's workshop, it was super powerful for me, really, to add that step. How would you make sure you do it? Because in a way, as Gail said, we got used to it. It's a pattern. 24 hours, 1 week, 1 day. And really then that question, how will I do it? At least it got me stuck, but I can say I went through, because Gail pushed us to how will you make sure you do it? And it did give me that kick. So thank you also for putting that. I think it's a very important feature, and I hope we add it to all of our work. And I think mainly for ourselves, to give that accountability. And before we finish, I just want to check anyone has anything last that popped up. Yes, Catherine.
Yes, thank you, all of you. I'm from Peru, and I'm really glad to get to know you. I have a question. According to your experience, how often do you find people that deny or don't want to face that they have the imposter syndrome? You mentioned a lot of famous people, and for us, it can be like a big discovery for us. Yes, I didn't realize, and I have it. But I guess for others, it's like, no, something that they want to deny.
If you have the imposter syndrome, because I've come across many people that I'm coaching, and I kind of realize that what I'm seeing and I observe it's imposter syndrome. So I put it on the table and says, let me tell you a little bit about the syndrome that maybe it can resonate with you. So I start talking about it, and 100% of the time they say, you know what, that's what I have. Because if you have it, being able to put it a name, it actually reduces the pressure that you're always having. like identifying for the first time, it says, this is what's wrong with me. This is what I always kind of self-boycotting me or feeling insecure all the time, or because it was my own journey, like being able to identify why I was always struggling with like overdoing things all the time. I say, well, if I have this syndrome, then probably I'm not alone. There is like stages that I could, or steps that I could do to don't feel like this a lot. If someone tells you, no, this is not me, it's because they don't have it. Because the one thing that helps anyone with imposter syndrome is to first to identify that what they're experiencing has a name and it has a pattern, and that many people face in it, and it also has a way out. It's kind of understanding something and seeing kind of a light at the end of the tunnel where you thought you were lost. Usually people that have it feel like they're the only ones that have it. So it's a very lonely feeling. And at the beginning, it was thought that it only affected women in the majority, because the first study that it was where the name kind of appears and emerged on 78, it was just studying overachieving women and highly achieving women. And then they saw, the majority of the female has it. And in a way, females kind of being successful in a very male world, they felt like they needed to kind of overdo it and try to be better, and probably they are going to realize that I don't deserve to be here, that they should have put them in. So it was very common to find it in women. But other studies later in the years 2000 and 2016 discovered that it's equally happens to either men and women. But I think that at least for everyone that have at some point talked to me, and I kind of identified elements, because I would not say that it's imposter syndrome at 100% all the time. People kind of have sometimes elements of it, or are going through a phase where they're experiencing the imposter syndrome. No one has denied it. If someone denies it, it's probably because they don't have it. And funny enough, people would like to have it and explain all their failures. And at some point I was talking to Marek, and says, yeah, people that has been a failure all their life, they come and says, yeah, it's because I have imposter syndrome. He says, no, because they're not successful. And imposter syndrome doesn't happen to unsuccessful people. It's usually you're successful, but you don't believe that you're successful or worthy of success, and that you are a fraud and you are in a place where you don't belong. So if you are unemployed, unsuccessful, you have other things, other issues, probably a fear of failure, absolutely, a lot of insecurity, a lot of but lack of self-trust, or a very low self-esteem. And the imposter syndrome is not the answer to everyone, but just to make sure it's present on highly achieving people that don't think that they deserve what they have, or that they got there by just luck. That's why they downplaying all their achievements, and why they thrive trying to just study more, learn more, because I am terrified that I'm going to be found a fraud. So just to clarify, because someone says, hey, I think I have imposter syndrome. And I know this person that says, you don't. You just have other issues, but not imposter syndrome.
Thank you so much for this question. And just looking at the time, I don't know when it flew, but our hour is over. So just being mindful of the time. Want to really take this opportunity to thank everyone for coming. Thank you so much for taking your time to be with us here to make these talks. We are really excited about them, and coming here is motivating us to keep it up as a chance, I think, to talk and to meet our facilitators and really learn from the experience. And thank you, Gail, so much for taking the time today and really sharing generously. I think I tried to make notes. You know, we talked about imposter syndrome, not syndrome, imposter syndrome. We talked about the syndrome. We talked about designing a whole workshop. We talked about how to approach executives. We talked about body coaching, 5 levels. So I feel we covered so much. So thank you for sharing with us so generously. We're gonna put the recording. It's gonna be available in the facilitation space if you wanna come and review it. And thank you so much, everyone. And I hope you have a beautiful weekend. And we'll see you soon in the next talks, meetings that we have. And in case you missed it, Gail's Imposter Syndrome Amazing Workshop is going to be in the second half of the year. Gail, do you remember the date? Gail,
Don't
remember.
do this to me, Marek.
We don't remember. Check it, but there's going to be another chance on the website if you haven't a chance to see it, to join Gail and introduce the workshop. It's not in December, so it's probably in September, October, in my opinion.
I don't remember.
That's okay. I don't remember either. It's all okay, but find it on the website or just PM me in the chat. I'll let you know when it is. And great. And you'll have a chance to see Gail at work. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a beautiful rest of the day and an amazing August weekend to all. Thank you.
Bye-bye.